Pablo Neruda, the voice of love and revolution. In the remote Chilean town of Temuco, where rain falls like poetry and forests whisper ancient secrets, a boy named Ricardo Eliezer Neftali Reyes Basolto discovered that words could change the world. The year was 1904, and the world had no idea it was witnessing the birth of Pablo Neruda. His father, a railway worker, wanted his son to follow a practical path. But at 13, young Ricardo was already writing verses that captured the melancholy of southern Chile's endless rains. When he adopted the pen name Pablo Neruda, inspired by Czech poet Jan Neruda, he was protecting his poetry from his father's disapproval. He could not have known he was creating a legend. At 20, Neruda published 20 love poems and a song of despair, a collection that would make him famous across Latin America. These were not the careful verses of an academic. They were raw, passionate declarations that spoke to lovers everywhere. "Love is so short, forgetting is so long," he wrote, and millions of hearts recognized their own truth in his words. But Neruda's pen could not remain focused only on love. As Chile's consul in Spain during the 1930s, he witnessed the brutality of the Spanish Civil War. The execution of his friend, poet Federico Garcia Lorca, transformed him forever. The man who had written about love with such tenderness now wrote about injustice with equal passion. Returning to Chile, Neruda entered politics as a communist senator, using his voice to defend workers and the oppressed. When he criticized President González Videla's government, he was forced into exile, a poet hunted like a criminal for speaking truth to power. For 3 years, he lived in hiding, crossing the Andes on horseback to escape to Argentina, his manuscripts hidden in his saddle. During his years of exile in Europe, Neruda wrote Canto General, an epic poem that told the story of Latin America from its geological birth to its colonial wounds to its dreams of liberation. It was poetry as history, love letter, and revolutionary manifesto all at once. The 1960s brought Neruda back to Chile and closer to his final triumph. As his country's ambassador to France, he lived between two worlds, the diplomatic salons of Paris and the earthier rhythms of his homeland. His poetry evolved too, embracing everyday objects and simple pleasures. He wrote odes to tomatoes, to his socks, to laziness itself, finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. In 1971, the call came from Stockholm. Pablo Neruda had won the Nobel Prize in Literature. The boy from Temuco who had hidden his poems from his father now stood before the world as the voice of Latin America, recognized for poetry that was a force of nature. But triumph and tragedy walked hand in hand in Neruda's Chile. In 1973, as military coup leaders prepared to overthrow his friend President Salvador Allende, Neruda lay dying of cancer in Santiago. Some say he died of a broken heart, watching his beloved Chile torn apart. He passed away on September 23, 1973, just 12 days after the coup that would silence so many voices. Even in death, Neruda remained dangerous to Chile's military regime. His books were banned, his houses ransacked, his legacy officially erased. But poetry, like love, cannot be killed by bullets or censorship. In secret, Chileans continued to recite his verses, keeping alive the words of the man who had promised that poetry cannot die because it is the memory of the people. Today, Pablo Neruda's houses in Chile are museums visited by lovers and dreamers from around the world. His words are translated into dozens of languages, recited at weddings and protests alike. The railway worker's son who became a poet, the poet who became a voice for justice, the voice that death itself could not silence. In the end, Pablo Neruda was right about poetry's immortality. Long after the generals who feared him are forgotten, his words continue to echo, "I love you without knowing how, or when, or from where. I love you simply, without problems or pride. In a world that often seems divided by hatred, Neruda's poetry reminds us that love, for another person, for justice, for life itself, remains our most revolutionary act.